And welcome to episode 395 of Geektown Radio. I'm your host, Dave, and with me this week is...
I'm on the radio too now! This is fine! What do you want to talk about?
Robert, how you doing?
Yes, I am back, so that means it must be a bank holiday.
Yes, it's a holiday in the US. It's Labor Day, in actual fact, isn't it, I believe? So,
yeah.
So you've got the day off, so we've got you back on the show. But it's been a little while since you've been on, so what sort of stuff have you been doing and watching and playing and stuff?
I watched through The Bear. Very good season. It's always important to watch a show and support a show where all the impactful stuff isn't like huge, bombastic, over the top. It's all like the human drama of it. And then when you really dig down into the subtext, you see how much that is and how well that's done, especially for a show like The Bear on what I'm guessing is a fairly minimal budget because it's basically nothing. It's really good. Outside of that, there really hasn't been a whole lot. I did rent the Super Mario Brothers movie, so that was really a good film. I understand why it did so well at the box office. They did have a theater day here in the States where they're trying to like kick-start the theater experience, and it was like $4 a ticket, but they wouldn't let me buy tickets because apparently a whole bunch of places had group sales. And so you could only fight in like groups of like 5 or 10. Oh. And I couldn't buy a single ticket, you know.
That seems slightly dumb.
Let's be honest, the world has gone dumb.
That's true, yeah.
And so, you know, I haven't seen anything relatively new. I had no interest in seeing Blue Beetle just because the whole reboot, not reboot of the DC universe is kind of makes that pointless.
Yeah.
There really hasn't been anything out movie-wise I've wanted to see. TV, we're in kind of a weird start with all the college sports starting up. So not a whole lot new has come out.
Yeah. We don't really have that over here, but in the US, they tend to shift things out of the way of things like college sport launches.
Oh, yeah. College football started up this weekend, and that's a multi-billion-dollar industry. If you ever get a chance, there are some college stadiums that have a bigger attendance capacity than Manchester United Stadium. Yeah. I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
Like Michigan and Ohio State, both of those are in like the 110, 115,000 capacity.
Yeah, it's really weird. You look at some of these college things, and I see these reports pop up every so often of like the college has just spent millions on like a new football stadium, like an insane, like the same level as a Premiership football team on a football
there's
stadium.
Some coaches,
it's crazy.
There's some coaches that get like $15 million a year for their coaching contract.
Yeah, the college sort of football stuff over there is just nuts. It sort of all feeds into the NFL, doesn't it? But because we don't have anything like that over here. I mean, we have under 21s teams and that sort of stuff, but they're not followed and covered in anywhere near the level of the college football over there. It's insane, that setup. What about game-wise? Have you been doing anything?
Game-wise, it's kind of been taken up by two things. Version 0.9 came out for Farthest Frontier, added a whole lot of new stuff, so I've been playing a lot of that.
Yeah.
And also a very Chrono Trigger-inspired game called Sea of Stars hit Game Pass last week, so I've been playing a lot of that. 16-bit style graphics, your typical JRPG stuff, turn-based combat, timed blocks, timed attacks. Like I said, it's you can tell whoever made it was a really big fan of Chrono Trigger. No frog anime, but basically it's a very homage kind of a game to that. And, you know, you're paste and cut, paint by numbers kind of a plot, but it's a decent enough game. It's just killing time for Starfield, which unlocks for me in 2 days.
Yes, we'll get onto that because I got early access to it, so yeah.
Jealous.
Yeah, we'll get onto that in a minute. Farthest Frontier, though, I've been playing around a little bit with that as well. That's a city builder, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm kind of in a weird state right now because I'm at tier 3 and I need a population of 400 to upgrade to tier 4. But every time I get a big influx of immigrants or births, raid of like 50 pillagers comes in and kills a ton of people, and it never really goes anywhere.
Yeah, it's a fun early access build that I think last time I played through it, you can actually turn the raiders off, and I just didn't want to deal with it, so I just turned them all off instead.
I'll have to see if I can find that setting.
Yeah.
It's getting annoying.
Because, I just want to be able to kind of build up a city, and there's enough other things going on, because it's a sort of medieval city builder, so you're building farms and you start off and upgrade the houses and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I finally got that part figured out.
Yeah.
To where, now I've got my 4th barn for cows for food, and my 12th farm making, who knows what, just so I can do this and that and the other.
Yeah, they've got quite a nice system in that game of the crop rotation thing, which is kind of interesting. They put a lot of thought into that. And it's quite advanced for an early access game. They're on like 0.9 at the moment. I don't know how far they are off full release, but it's got quite a lot of stuff going on in it. So it's definitely worth a look, that one. Anything else you've been playing around with?
Not really. Like I said, I'm just kind of spinning my wheels till Starfield.
Yeah, I went through a phase of that. That was when I was last playing Farthest Frontier as well. It was like, what's small that I can pick up and play just until Starfield comes out? Because I looked at Baldur's Gate and I was like, yeah, I quite like to play that, but I don't want to be in the middle of playing Baldur's Gate when Starfield drops. So I was sort of also in the same position of spinning my wheels a bit until that kind of came out. So I was looking.
Speaking of Baldur's Gate 3, there's an interesting exploit that just got shown. So there's this weapon that you can find in the game called Twist of Fortune, to where it does bonus damage depending on how much gold the monster that you're attacking has. But it's like a one-off use. You have to do a full rest, and then you get one use of it. Right. And so people are reverse pickpocketing and putting like 15,000 gold, and they're one-shotting bosses doing that. It's like +3 damage for every 300 gold. So you put 15,000 gold in somebody's pocket, and then all of a sudden that's like 5,000 damage, and then boom, dead.
I love the fact that people come up with these wonderfully inventive ways of like exploiting things like that.
Yeah, and they're not even like breaking the game in terms of like hacking or mods or rules or nothing. It's just like, oh, here's this. Let's dial it up to 11.
Yeah, I love stuff like that. That's brilliant. The other thing I've been playing, which I mentioned last week, was there's this little game called Stacklands. Technically, it's a city builder, but it's also a sort of card game as well. So it's sort of a city builder, but with cards laid out on a tabletop. So you have a villager card and you stick the villager card on top of a tree, and that creates 2 wood cards. There are sort of animal cards, and they sort of bounce around the screen until you build a barn for them, and then they'll sort of stay in one place, and they'll sort of bounce around the screen and knock the other cards out of their way and stuff. So it's more an irritant than anything else. There is a sort of overarching plot of sort of this old witch that you've got to go and try and beat, and there's an island that you've got to get to. And so it actually surprisingly works quite well for 2 things which you'd look at and go, well, a tabletop sort of card thing and a city builder really shouldn't work together, but they do. That I was having quite a lot of fun with. And then Starfield came out, so, everything else got dropped after that.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that game. I'm looking at it on Steam right now. It looks kind of interesting, but minimalistic, and it's very affordable. But that did remind me of a stream that Bex did a while back. She was playing For the King.
Oh, yeah.
And so she hired a bunch of foresters to cut down the forest. And in typical Bex fashion, things went epically wrong. Turns out the forest was haunted. The trees came alive and ate all the woodsmen.
Excellent. That's what you want. Yeah, I've not played that game, but I know she was messing around with it. It is one that I will pick up at some point because it looks like it's great fun. So
it's the very definition of the dog sitting in a burning building going, everything is fine. This is fine.
That is one that I will go and look at some point. But yes, Stacklands, I would say if you want a nice little game that you can go and pick up and play around with, it could be a bit frustrating at times just because it could be a bit difficult. But It's a really interesting idea, and very much enjoyed playing around with that. As I've mentioned a few times, the main thing I've been messing around with is, of course, Starfield, because if you paid a little bit of extra money, you got early access. So I paid the extra and got the early access because I wanted to get on as soon as I could.
Yeah, $30 is not a little bit of extra.
That's fair enough. No, you do get some other bits and pieces with that as well. But I mean, one of the main benefits was the early access, because that's the deluxe edition, basically, if you paid for that. So I've been playing around with that, and it is, of course, the big new release from Bethesda. And I would say it is a Bethesda game through and through, with all the pluses and minuses that come with that. First of all, it is massive. I'm about 26 hours into it at the moment, and I barely feel like I've even scratched the surface of the stuff that there is to do in that game. I read online that the main plot line is anywhere between sort of 40 and 60 hours, which
is going to be average for pretty much any game.
Yeah, but that's just the main plot itself. And there are other plot lines that I've already started following, which are getting up there with being probably a good 10, 15 hours on their own. So I don't know how many of those sort of things are, or whether I just happened to stumble across one. But if you know anything about the other Bethesda games like Skyrim and Fallout, you'll know so much of the fun comes from ignoring the main plot and just doing other things in those games. The basic setup for the story is you start out, you're a miner, you find this thing, you touch the thing, it gives you a vision. The thing is apparently some sort of alien tech, which, I mean, I'm not really giving anything away because this is
all from the trailers and whatnot.
And all in that stuff, yeah. Person from this exploration group called the Constellation shows up and invites you to join them, and so you can find more parts of the thing to find out what it does. Essentially, that is the setup for the main plot. But the world that you're in is a sort of future version of the galaxy where Earth has pretty much been abandoned. You're mostly taking place in this futuristic city called New Atlantis. That's where you first start. There are other cities on other planets, and you can fly around from planet to planet and go and visit various other things. There has been some criticism of the space exploration thing, because if you're expecting something like Elite or like No Man's Sky even, it's not that. The getting from planet to planet is basically clicking the planets in the map more than anything else. I mean, you do have a ship, and the ship customization stuff is ridiculous. You can build all sorts of weird and wonderful ships that serve as a sort of home base for you and add bits on and create all sorts of things for that. There'll be wonderful designs if you go and sort of check out online. You've seen all sorts of designs for that sort of stuff. But in reality, you're not really traveling through space. In terms of you actually traveling from planet to planet, there isn't a sort of warp effect and you see in the cockpit. You know, like if you've played, I don't know whether you've played the Star Wars games, for example, the way that they cover the cut sequences and the loading sequences in that is you're sitting in the cockpit. It's a bit like with Mass Effect with the elevator rides. If you've ever played that game, the way they covered the cut sequences and the loading in the next bit of the game was you got in an elevator and you'd have these cute little conversations between your group. There's none of that here, and I do feel that's a little bit of a missed opportunity. I mean, it doesn't take very long to load the next planet or anything. It's relatively quick, but you also sort of feel that it breaks the immersion a little bit, and that side of things I think they could have handled a little bit better. Traveling from planet to planet is basically clicking things on a map, but there is a lot of stuff to explore. There are some planets which are already settled. There are some planets which aren't, and you can go and kind of find and claim and stuff. There are the usual Bethesda issues in that they still can't do a decent inventory management system, which, I mean, if you've played Skyrim or you've played Fallout, you know what that is. They've still not managed to kind of nail that. It's still a bit janky. There are things like you could do with maps when you're in the cities. There are sort of maps of the planet and it marks sort of the wider locations, but there's no overview map of exactly where you are in the city like you might have in other games, or a mini map or that sort of stuff. So there are little niggles with things like that. Having said that, they do support mods.
Yeah, and the wide range of mods which are already out and I've already seen have been ridiculous. You've got the super functional, like there's this one mod to where it removes all the filters to where you actually see like the actual colors and the game looks like a million times better. And then there's the mod that replaces the start screen with the anime girls, which is just the utter ridiculousness of it.
Yeah, that's always the thing with Bethesda games. There is a lot of mod support usually for these things. And I mean, there are things, the basic sort of modification, which I think you can actually do by just going in and changing a bit of code, from removing the weight limit so you can actually go and pick up absolutely everything you see. Money generally hasn't been a problem for me so far. I mean, you get paid enough from doing various jobs. And I mean, there have been things from go and kill this space pirate to, you know, go and put these sensors out somewhere, to stop a bank robbery, to trying to think what else they've had you do. Go and find a power outage by following cables around. The side quest stuff is pure Bethesda, and they've done a brilliant job with that stuff. I think the more you play with it and the more you sit with it, the more you will grow to love it. I think the expectation is so high for this game that it was never going to be what people thought it was. But if you like things like Fallout, if you like things like Skyrim, this is basically that in space. It is that. They've not implemented everything maybe the way that I would have necessarily thought would be the best way to do it. But in terms of the stories and the fun and the massive amount of stuff to do and the hugeness of the open world, there is a lot that you can play around with and have fun in there. It is a giant sandbox and it is worth going to get. I am having fun with it. I will no doubt not be playing anything else for a very, very long time. So
I'm curious, as an aside, have you seen the ship that Adam Savage built for the game?
No.
So Adam Savage, who was on Mythbusters,
yes,
he did a collaboration with Bethesda to where they actually gave him in-game assets. Him and his team for his production company converted that to be usable for 3D printing, and they've been 3D printing parts to assemble a ship to do promotions for it. So some of the shots that you've seen for like the live action trailer or whatnot are that ship that he's built, and they've been going very detailed into some like the old school physical modeling builds for doing that stuff. And it's utterly fascinating that even with all the modern technology, if you just build the damn thing in real life and not CGI it, it just looks so much better. And it's on his YouTube channel, so you should check that out if you're at all interested.
Yeah, that would be quite an interesting one to do. And I mean, if you look around in terms of the shipbuilding stuff, we've seen people just come up with some very, very cool looking designs. And then some people are building Millennium Falcons, some people are building like Fireflies. I mean, there's all sorts of bizarre, fun things that people have kind of tried to recreate using the shipbuilder. So there's a lot of stuff. You can spend hours messing around in there. That's been really fun. And I mean, you can also, as well as doing all that sort of stuff, the ship isn't your only home. You can have apartments on planets. You can go and build outposts. You can assign people to outposts to collect stuff. As I said, I am 25 hours into this, and I really feel like I've only barely scratched the surface of it. There is a lot more to play with in this game. If you like these Bethesda games, if you liked Fallout, if you like Skyrim, pick this up because you are not going to be disappointed. You are going to have fun with this game. Definitely worth going to check out. In terms of TV stuff that I've been watching, got to the end of season 2 of the US version of Ghosts. That was great. Really enjoyed the second season of it. It's one of those things that took a UK show, much like they did with The Office, and ran in their own direction with it and did a really, really good job on the US version. It's as charming as the UK version. Does a really nice job. They've sort of stretched the stories out. They've managed to find a way of making it fit with the American history. It's a really, really fun little sort of 25-minute comedy show. And 2 seasons up on iPlayer, worth going to check that one out. Invasion, I started watching on Apple. The second season has just come out, so I started watching the first one. Invasion is pretty much what it says on the tin. It's about an alien invasion, but the way that they've done it is you are following various groups of people from around the world. So there's like a bunch of army rangers that are in Afghanistan towards the end of the war. You've got a group that are launching a space shuttle in Japan. You've got a family in America. You've got a group of kids in England. So you're following all these sort of different stories, and things start raining out of the sky, and nobody knows quite what's going on. And that's the basic start for it. It is not a sort of big pew-pew aliens landing with guns and blowing everything up. It's not that. It's more in the sort of, if you've seen the recent adaptation of the War of the Worlds, it's more in that sort of vein of being rather more dramatic, and you're following the sort of human side of that. It is glacially slow for the first 5 episodes. It's one of those things that I kind of looked at and thought, you know, what they actually do is they jump from story to story to story, so you get a little bit of each of them in each episode. I do wonder if they would have been better off in the first 5 episodes actually separating the stories out and like focusing one episode on each, you know, the family in America, the kids in the UK, and done an episode on each of them rather than splitting them all up, because it's one of those things where it gets to an interesting point in that one group story, and then suddenly it cuts away to like another thing, and you're like, no, I wanted to see what happened at the end of that. So it's a bit frustrating, but after those first 5 episodes, it does start to build up a bit more momentum and moving forward a little bit. I'm on about episode 8 of that first season, and I can see why it turns some people off, because it is a bit of a slog getting through those first few episodes, because it can be really, really, really slow. But it's well crafted. It's just, that's a bit of a drag. So I'm enjoying it, but I sort of want to get to the end first season. I will take a look at the second season as well. Over on Alibi, they launched So Help Me Todd, which is a nice little CBS dramedy in the sort of vein of something like maybe Elementary or The Rookie. It's that sort of humor crossed with drama kind of level. It's about a guy who is a PI, but he's lost his license because his business partner screwed up. And he's the bit of the sort of black sheep of the family. And his mother is a high-flying lawyer. It ends up with him working for his mother's law firm. And he's sort of the maverick PI thing, and she's very straight-laced. So that's pretty much the setup for that. If you like those sort of dramedy shows, absolutely perfectly watchable. Can't really say much more about it than that. It's on Alibi right now. It was on CBS in the US. There's a season of that going out.
Yeah, it's Marsha Gay Harden too, so that alone is worth watching it for.
Yes, and she's great. She plays the mother. The son is played by Skylar Astin, who you might know from Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. He starred as Max in that. So he's a really likable actor. And Marsha Gay Harden is great. I mean, she's been in a million things. So yeah, you know, she's wonderful. The next thing, Miracle Workers, End Times. I've been watching that. Steve Buscemi and Daniel Radcliffe, the 2 main leads of it. The first season was set in heaven. Daniel played an angel and Steve Buscemi plays God. Second season was set in medieval times. Third season was on the Oregon Trail. And this season is basically set in a sort of Mad Max post-apocalyptic future. And Daniel and Geraldine Viswanathan, who plays his wife or girlfriend or love interest in most of these, they play people that have been sort of out in the world. He's like a sort of road warrior and she's this warlord. They meet out on the road, fall in love, and decide to move to the suburbs in a place called Boomtown. And it's sort of about suburban life, but in post-apocalyptic sort of world. And it's the same sort of silly humor that you got in the first 3 seasons. Really, really enjoyable.
I've never heard of this show. I just looked it up. It's on TBS, which is Turner Broadcasting, which is a cable channel over here in the States.
Right.
And I don't have cable. I haven't had cable for 15 years, so this wouldn't have never been on my radar.
It is a really, really fun show, and it's well worth checking out if you've not managed to catch it yet. But the 4th season of that, which is called End Times, is going out on Sky Comedy over here, as you say, and it's on TBS in the US. The other thing which actually starts this week is Star Trek Lower Decks. The 4th season of that drops, but I have seen a few preview episodes of this. It's a really, really good opening episode. It has the crew of the Cerritos who are assigned to assist the caretaker on the voyage of, it says a historically significant starship in this, so I won't give any more away than that. But it's a wonderfully fun, really messes around with some of the sort of historical stuff as they do with Lower Decks. Really great opening episode. And also there are promotions in the works this season as well. So some of the crew get promoted, which is also quite interesting. And it looks like they are actually making that a permanent thing. There's a few things changing in it, which sort of makes sense. And I'm glad they're not just using the sort of Simpsons trope of everybody stays basically the same from episode to episode. They are actually kind of moving things on and having some of the characters get promoted and stuff. Lower Decks is brilliantly funny and highly entertaining. So if you're a Star Trek fan and you've maybe been avoiding it because it's a comedy, don't, because it is very, very Trek in its own right.
It's also hilarious that they made a whole show that's in its 4th season from a one-off Next Generation episode. I think it's actually called Lower Decks. Hang on, let me look it up.
Oh, yes, you're right. I don't know whether that was initially the inspiration for it, but certainly, yeah, there was a Next Generation episode that was sort of based around the Lower Decks. And I'm so glad that they've kind of run with that because it does make for a really, really entertaining show. What I like is they managed to keep the comedy, but also keep it very Star Trek as well and not tread over the canon too much. They do a really, really good job of balancing that out. Lower Decks is out later this week. It's out on Paramount Plus over here and it'll be on Prime Video as well here. So it's a couple of places you can watch it, but the first 3 seasons are now on Paramount Plus as well, so you can go and check that out over there. That's all the stuff we've been doing this week. Let's move on to some TV and film news. So we kick off the TV and film news with renewals, cancellations and pickups. There's been a couple of cancellations. How I Met Your Father has been cancelled by Hulu after 2 seasons. The Great also cancelled by Hulu after 3 seasons. Did you see either of those?
No, I've not seen How I Met Your Father. The last season of How I Met Your Mother just annoyed me so much. I had literally zero interest of it. The Great, not heard of that. I actually canceled my Disney Plus, so I don't get Hulu anymore, so I'm not able to watch any of those shows.
Yeah, The Great was a historical dramedy about Catherine the Great and her sort of rise to power in Russia. I think out of the 2 of them, that's the one that raised a few eyebrows, the fact that they cancelled that, because How I Met Your Father, I mean, it's Hulu, so we don't know viewing figures for either of these, but How I Met Your Father, I think anybody that had seen that, it's fun enough, but it didn't have anywhere near the spark that How I Met Your Mother had, and the cast didn't gel as well. And I mean, it was fine, but I'm not overly shocked that they've decided not to bring that back. The Great, though, universally have been getting excellent reviews across the board. It had also had a stack of Emmy nominations. I think it had won one for costuming, but it hadn't actually won anything for the cast. But it had got like 9 Emmy nominations or something. So I think it's a little surprising that they decided to cancel that. I mean, the one reason that they may have done is because it isn't made by Disney. How I Met Your Father was made by Disney. It was made by 20th Television. The Great actually wasn't. It was made by outside studios. So in the UK, it didn't air on Disney Plus. It actually, we don't have Hulu, but it didn't air on Disney Plus. It aired on Lionsgate Plus and on Channel 4 later on. So I don't think they had the international rights for it. which will probably mean that they weren't making anywhere near the same amount of money that they maybe would have done had they made it themselves. So I think that possibly may be part of the reason that contributed to its demise. Maybe it was expensive. I don't know. But unfortunately, that's gone after 3 seasons. HBO have also, well, sort of cancelled the show, The Idol, which got a very mixed response when that was released on HBO. That was actually kind of conceived as a limited series in the first place anyway, but there was some talk about them doing more of it. That's now definitely not happening. So they're not bringing that back. So The Idol won't be returning. There are a couple of renewals. Lincoln Lawyer has been renewed for season 3 on Netflix, which I'm very happy about because that's another good dramedy. They've also renewed something called the Merton Murders, A Southern Scandal. That's been renewed for season 2 on Netflix. You aware of either of those?
No, I haven't had Netflix for the longest time, and I don't have HBO either, so
right.
It's way too expensive to try to keep up with streaming.
Yeah.
Because HBO is $15 a month. Netflix, I forget if I talked about this last time I was on, but the $9.99 a month is for 420p. You actually have to pay $15 a month to get it in HD. And that's just insane.
Yeah, I object to that strongly. The fact that they tie that picture quality to how much you pay is nuts to me. That's completely insane. In some pickups and other news, there has been a new pickup on the BBC. They've picked up season 2 of The Newsreader, which is an Australian drama. They aired season 1 last year, so they picked up season 2 of that. Disney have shuffled some shows around as well. So Loki season 2, that date is staying. That's still the 6th of October, so we're still getting that then. What If season 2, which was originally way back set for early 2023, is now going to be released in December this year, so sometime around Christmas. Echo, which was originally supposed to be November 29th, they've moved that to January. X-Men 97 was supposed to be autumn. That's now been moved to early 2024. Agatha, which was originally supposed to be winter 2023, have been pushed all the way back to October 2024. And Daredevil Born Again, which had been given a date of spring 24, Ironheart, which was supposed to be in this autumn, and Wonder Man, which didn't have a date, all have been delayed until after the strike gets resolved. So we don't know when they're likely to turn up. So yeah, a bit of shuffling around them, but most of that I think is, or some of that is strike related certainly, because Daredevil hadn't finished filming, for example, which is why that's got pushed back. I'm not sure if that's also the case with Agatha maybe, but I mean, that was supposed to come out later this year, so you know, you would have thought they would finish that. I think part of it is just trying to spread things out because of the fact that they're running out of content, maybe. But are you following any of, I mean, I know you don't have Disney now, but
I did see the cancellations, but I'm wondering if this delay is more from the fact that Disney got hit with another lawsuit by investors over them lying about streaming numbers and streaming revenue. So
possibly. They have been sort of trying to cut costs, and we know that they're moving things around, and I don't know whether this is trying to paper over holes or whatever. I don't know what the exact reasoning for this is. Some of it will be strike related because they just literally haven't finished filming.
It's an easy excuse.
Yeah, as you say, that is an easy excuse. I mean, like Ironheart, for example, has been backburnered, and that was originally due out in the autumn, nowish. So you would have thought most of that should actually have been shot. And like, they gave Echo a release date and they've pushed that back to January. So they're not necessarily relating to them having not filmed things. I think some of these may be having to get shifted around based on them moving movies around as well, would be the other thing, because with it all being interconnected, you will have to move things based on if you're pushing movies back and stuff. There is some of that. True Detective has also moved as well. True Detective Night Country, which is the new season of that's been pushed to January 2024, so that's coming on HBO. Interesting little bit of Walking Dead news. Walking Dead Dead City has been registered at the BBFC, which is the people that give the ratings in the UK. That is usually a sign that it's going to get some sort of UK release, because none of those Walking Dead spin-offs have been released in the UK yet. We don't know where. We don't know whether it'll be a release to buy it somewhere or whether that means it's going to end up on a streaming service, but it does sort of indicate that it's going to be coming out, because otherwise they wouldn't have rated it, because I think they have to go and actually request that the thing is rated. So it would seem that it's going to pop up at some point somewhere, but other than that, we don't know. Over on Paramount Plus, Yellowstone. Have you heard any of this stuff? I don't know whether you've seen any of Yellowstone.
I've not seen it. I have heard backdrop drama for that.
Yes.
Outside of that, I don't really know anything about the whole thing.
So if you've not been following all the drama at Yellowstone, basically the series was supposed to be continuing, and they're on the 5th season. They then announced that the 5th season was going to be the final season because Kevin Costner didn't want to do it anymore. And weirdly, this sort of came out of the child support hearing because he's getting divorced at the moment and he had to testify at his child support hearing. So they're part of the divorce proceedings. So some of this sort of news came out of that, and he was talking about, they were obviously talking about incomes and like what he was working on and that sort of stuff. So Costner said he had every intention of returning for a 6th season, but he said, I couldn't help them anymore, was the way he phrased it. We tried to negotiate, but they offered me less money than for the previous seasons. He claimed there were also issues with the creative. So it sounds like he just wasn't happy with where it was going, and they tried to offer him less money than he'd been paid previously. He also said that the issues with season 5, and there's basically been this rift between Kevin Costner and Tyler Sheridan, who's the show creator, because they split the 5th season into 2 parts. That kind of upset him, because there was a show that I was filming once a year and now suddenly I'm filming it twice. He's got a feature film which he's working on as well, which is his own feature film, and he planned to shoot that in between season 5 parts 1 and 2, but they still hadn't finished shooting the first half by the time that he was due and scheduled to go off and shoot his movie. So that kind of screwed him over, and also said that there were no scripts written for the second half either. So it sounds like things have been a bit disorganized, according to Costner at Yellowstone. And he's basically just gone, stuff this, I'm just walking away. So what they're now doing is they are ending Yellowstone at season 5, and there will be a new show which will take some of the cast over from the original show, but will have a new lead who is rumored to be, is it Matthew McConaughey? I think they were working on trying to get in as the new lead. Obviously all that is completely on hold until after all the strike stuff is resolved, but there is that. So drama and stuff, but if you were wondering what was going on with Yellowstone, that's what's been going on with Yellowstone. And the other bit of news that came out was The Last of Us Season 2 is apparently all set and ready to go, but obviously they can't do anything until the strike ends, according to Neil Druckmann. So they apparently are all prepped for that, and they can start shooting pretty much as soon as the strike is all resolved. But that is good news, at least for that. Speaking of the strike, we're obviously been trying to keep you up to date with what's going on with that. One of the news stories that came out was Actors Union, SAG-AFTRA, were apparently also in negotiations with the video games companies about a deal, and it's looking like there is a distinct possibility they may strike against the video games companies as well. They've basically reached a stalemate of the deal of that. It was some of the similar issues that they're having with the Hollywood studios over wages and guaranteed amounts of pay for the work that they're doing, and also on AI as well. And I mean, arguably, video games and AI are probably slightly more difficult, and the stuff to do with the licensing of scanning people's face and using that and all that sort of stuff, that's a lot trickier when it comes to the video game things. The announcement on Friday said the union had been asking video games companies for an 11% increase in rates paid to video game performance. They also are asking for protections from AI, which they say poses a threat to the artist's future work and careers, as well as better working conditions, which is pretty much everything that they've been asking for from Hollywood as well. In a statement to the BBC, a spokesperson for the 10 video game company involved in the talk said that all sides were seeking a fair contract that reflects the work done by performers. I mean, whilst this sort of stuff, particularly with the AI and the usage of people's faces, movies and that sort of stuff. It's in its infancy in the movie stuff. With the video games, I can sort of see why that's going to be a bigger sticking point, because if you're the lead in a video game and they're actually using your face, you want to be kind of careful of what you've signed up for there and what they can actually use that for moving forward. And I mean, it's no surprise that the two companies that get named in this are Activision and Electronic Arts, because I mean, the way that they've treated people in the past, it doesn't surprise me that those are the two companies that are coming out on the wrong side of this.
Yeah, it's like there's a weird contest between those two companies on who could be the worst.
Yeah, there really is. And I mean, I hadn't even realized that the Actors Union dealt with the video game side of things, because I mean, there has been all sorts of, I mean, I remember even going back as far as things like GTA 4, the actors talking about how badly they were paid for those sort of games. The actor that played the cousin, I remember, particularly spoke out about it. They record an awful lot of stuff for that, and they're used all over the place, and I don't know what they get back from it, but it's nowhere near as much as you think it probably should be, I suspect. I can sort of see why they're fighting there. So, I mean, we'll see what happens with that. But yes, there could possibly a strike between the actors and the video games as well now. I mean, obviously, that's not going to have as bigger impact as it has done on Hollywood, but it's still going to have some sort of impact. There is some good news on the strike front. AMC Networks, of all people, have actually struck a deal with SAG-AFTRA to get some shows back to work. So the Walking Dead spin-offs and Interview with the Vampire, they will go back to filming. Interview with the Vampire will resume filming its second season in Prague. Daryl Dixon, that will film its second season in Europe. And Walking Dead, The One Who Lives, which is the Andrew Lincoln, Denai Guerrera, Rick and Michonne thing, that was basically finished but had some post-production work left to do, and that required some voice work from the two actors. So they've got dispensation to go back and finish that. They've struck a deal directly with the union to allow them to go back and work. There have been a few shows and movies that have managed to strike direct deals with the union. In a lot of cases, it's when they are filming outside of the US and when they're filming with a lot of cast members who aren't SAG-AFTRA cast members, where they're like filming in the UK. So, for example, Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon is still filming because most of the cast there are equity members rather than SAG members. There have been a few places where deals have been struck where you've got one or two actors that are maybe SAG and the rest of them aren't, so they don't want to hold up the entire production for a bunch of other people in a different country. They've come to an agreement of deal to be able to get those back working again. It does bring up the interesting point that one ex-Hollywood exec suggests, which are the biggest sticking points we've been talking about previously with this strike, has been the amount of money that they are paid from the streaming services, because, and the streaming services are claiming that they can't pay them these ridiculously small amount extra based on the popularity of the shows, which is what they do in network TV. And one ex-Hollywood exec has basically said what the TV networks, so you're talking the sort of, Fox, NBC, CBS, CW, ABC, what those guys should actually do is just ignore the streaming services and go and do a deal directly with the union themselves. So at least they can all start working and they can all go back to work, which would alleviate some of the pressure off the networks. And hopefully, as long as SAG gets a decent deal out of them, it also potentially puts pressure on the streamers, because it means that they're being cut out of the loop and they're the only ones that can't get content out. That's an interesting idea. I don't know whether they'd ever do it, but I think that would be one way of moving forward. I don't know whether you've been following any of the strike stuff.
Well, here's the thing with the strike, and this is something that you kind of know, but you don't really want to admit, is that the companies want this strike, and they want this strike to last as long as possible because it gives them a perfect excuse to cancel shows that they know are going to fail under the guise of it's the strike's fault, not we know this is absolute garbage. We can't cancel it because we're going to lose too much ESG score or politics or whatever. So we'll just blame the strike. And you can see that in the fact that the last 8 Disney movies combined have lost over $1 billion. The ratings for all their Disney Plus shows are just absolutely cratering, to where on Rotten Tomatoes, the final episode of Secret Invasion is rated at like 9% now. Still gets a 7 out of 10 from IGN, so I don't even look at IGN anymore. And that's the reason why I canceled Disney Plus. Oh, do you like Willow? Okay, well, we'll bring it back, but we'll shit all over the character. Yeah. Oh, do you like Nick Fury? Oh, we'll bring him back, but we'll make him a broken old man. Oh, do you like Indiana Jones? Oh, we'll bring him back, but now he's a sad, pathetic drunk. Yeah, I'm done with all that. And a lot of people are. It's the reason why Disney stock is at a 15-year low.
Yeah.
It's down over 120 points over the last 3 years. And people are just done. And now this strike is a perfect excuse to cancel all this stuff they know is going to fail. They know is going to make everybody mad. They know is going to lose them a ton of money. And so they're just cutting their losses now.
I think there is a certain amount of that. Certainly, they are using the strike as an excuse to be able to get rid of some things. The problem is that they don't seem to have a plan after that as well, because you still need to make content, even if they get rid of all this stuff. Okay, great. You've got rid of all the stuff that you don't think is going to work, but what are you going to do? There doesn't seem to be much thought moving past that. The whole strike, from the studio's point of view, there doesn't seem to be any forethought of sort of what happens next. They can cancel shows, they can screw over the actors, they can screw over the writers, or try to as much as they like. But at the end of the day, they still need these people to make content. And they're at a point where you've got writers and actors saying, we literally can't afford to do this anymore because we are not making a livable wage. And you're also trying to sort of replace things with AI and digital actors and that sort of stuff. I've heard no sort of future, what the future landscape looks like if they manage to get their way.
The irony is that they always use the term livable wage, but this is in California, literally the most expensive place.
Well, that is true.
In America, quite possibly the planet to live in.
Yes, that is true. That is a problem in itself, of course, as well.
Because I work, what I make for what I work, I would literally have to make 5 times as much if I was doing what I was doing in California.
Yeah.
And what I do is not worth 5 times as much just to maintain the same lifestyle.
Yeah, that is an issue as well. But you aren't only talking about California. I mean, you're talking about people that are shooting in Atlanta. You're talking about people that even, the ones that go up and shoot in Canada. And again, you're not talking about, for every named actor that for every sort of Bryan Cranston, there are like 5,000 unnamed actors that are not making a livable wage, underneath that. So,
you look at any episode on IMDb, and once you get past the stars, you'll see 30, 40 people that you've never heard of.
Yeah. Again, to me, there just doesn't seem to be a plan moving forward, and they hit this stalemate because I don't think the actors and the writers are going to back down, and the studios seem to be blindly prepared to just go forward. And yes, well, they might get to sort of dump a bunch of stuff that they don't think will make any money. Okay, but what are you going to do? Because if you've got no content, you've got no product. Sort of like burning down your shop because the rent's too high, but still wanting to sell stuff,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I agree with you. There is no plan, but there was never a plan to begin with, so.
No, well, I mean, that's the other thing is, the whole thing about the streaming residual side of things. They've been saying, it's too difficult to work out because at the moment the actors and writers are paid based on whatever they were hired at and the amount of subscribers on that particular streaming service. They're not paid for the amount of views that a particular show gets, which is how you pay on network TV. If a show's incredibly popular, you get paid more as the actor or the writer of it because the show's incredibly popular. They try to claim, that's very difficult to do. We can't do that for America. The fact is that they are forced to do that in European countries. They do it in France, they do it in Germany, I think they do it in Sweden, they do it in a number of European countries. They are forced by law to work that way. So to try and say that it's not possible is rubbish. So
yeah, especially with streaming services, because that you can track very, very easily.
Yeah.
Now, the flip side of that is people are dumping subscription services left and right. Variety reported back in May, Disney Plus lost 4 million subs, which is down 26%. So when I said I quit my Disney Plus subscription, I wasn't the only one. If you look, especially if you look at other subscription services like Netflix or whatever, all the big ones, people are dropping them left and right because there's too many of them and they're getting too expensive.
Yeah, people were sort of like asking for more choice, and it was great when you had a situation where, like, I mean, the entire premise of Hulu when it was first set up was it was a place where they put a whole bunch of different shows from different places on Hulu. It's now changed, so every single different company has their own streaming service and they're expecting you to pay for them separately. And we've actually heard both, I think it was Warner Brothers and one of the other guys, they've actually talked about sort of saying the way forward is for us to team up and sell these things as packages.
And that's what Hulu was, because you could get, at least over here in the States, you could get ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox shows all at one place, and they collabed. And now they're all splitting up and doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And the other downside to all these streaming services is that, like you said, they got to have content, and they come up with I swear it's like a dartboard of stupidity for the content. I was flipping channels to the other day, and there was a reality show, and I'm not making this up. You can look this up. It's a reality dating show, and it was called Boy Island.
Yes.
That is actually a show.
It is. I'm aware of that. F-Boy Island, I'm aware of that, yes. And I think they've actually done a female spin-off of it as well.
Yeah, it's called MILF Manor.
Yeah, there are shows that occasionally pop up on UK TV and going, really? That some of the things that they cover, usually on Channel 4 late at night or Channel 5, but it's Channel 5 particularly is bad for it. But some of the reality things just blow my mind what they're actually coming up with. But, you know, it's cheap TV and that's why they do it. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, we don't know how long this strike is going to go on for. There are no signs of it ending anytime soon. They had originally said that Labor Day, i.e. today, when we're recording this, was sort of the deadline for them to be able to actually get at least half seasons of shows out. They have now said that if they can do it in the next couple of weeks and actually resolve something in the next few weeks, then they might be able to get half seasons out. But it's looking increasingly unlikely that they're going to manage to do it. And it's looking very likely that particularly for those big network things, your NCISs and your Law and Orders and all that sort of stuff, you are probably not going to get new seasons of that until potentially September, October next year. You're just going to miss a year of them, most likely, because they probably aren't going to bring them back off season. And the longer this goes on, as I say, if they don't manage to bring them back by October, the chances of them actually managing to film something that they could get on screen by sort of February, when it would come back post-Christmas for half a season, it's not very likely. So it's going to be interesting, I think, over the next few weeks as they start to run out of content, because they've still got things that they can put out at the moment, but that well is going to run dry. Then we really are going to see how much they're prepared to move. That's where we are with the strike. There's not really much other news around at the moment, so we're just going to move on to some highlights for next week on TV. So, highlights for next week. We have Justified City Primeval. That is coming to Disney Plus on the 6th of September. That's Timothy Oliphant returning as Ryland Givens. 6th of September on Disney Plus for that. Top Boy returns for its 5th and final season. That's on Netflix on the 7th of September. Love and Death, that comes to ITVX. That's a Elizabeth Olsen starring, I think it's a true crime thing, but two church-going couples enjoy a small-town family life in Texas until somebody picks up an axe. But that's called Love and Death. That's ITVX on the 7th of September. The Killing Kind, which is a new limited series coming to Paramount Plus. That's 7th of September. It's based on a best-selling novel by Jane Casey. The Lovers, that is a darkly comic romantic drama about finding your soulmate in the most unlikely of places. That's coming to Sky Max on 7th of September at 9 p.m. Virgin River returns for its 5th season. That's on Netflix on the 7th of September as well. And pretty much everything, 7th of September. And as I mentioned earlier, Star Trek Lower Decks, season 4 of that lands 7th of September on Paramount Plus.
Yeah, I did find that on IMDb. It's season 7, episode 15 of Next Generation. It's literally called Lower Decks.
There you go.
A mission of the Enterprise is seen through the eyes of junior officers who are up for promotion as questions of duty and honor arise among among them.
Yeah, so that was sort of, I think, the inspiration point. I think you're probably right for it. But yeah, it is a brilliant, brilliant show. Season 4 is great. It's a wonderful opening episode as well. So Star Trek Lower Decks Season 4, Paramount Plus, and Prime Video as well. It's on both. That's 7th of September for that. That is everything for this week. If people want to hear more of you, they can find you over on Entertainment Talk, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we do. Matt and I do gaming podcasts. We didn't do one last week. He wasn't feeling really great. I don't know if everything is so much Starfield that everything gets drowned out. Yeah. It's like those videos you see of when they open up a clean gate for like a dam, and then it just like a little bit comes out, and then all of a sudden just like whoosh, and water shoots out 100 feet across. That's kind of what my YouTube feed is right now for anything. Yes. It's all Starfield. Yeah. Tips, tricks, here's this, here's that, here's this Easter egg, and I'm just like blah 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 blah. I don't want to see. Don't spoil it. Yes, that is the problem when it gets out early access. So yes, there is. Hopefully, I got through my talking about it without too many spoilers, but there is a lot of Starfield stuff out there. But Starfield officially releases on the 6th. That's the Wednesday. So yeah, it will be out very, very, very soon, and you can go and play around with that. Unless you bought the early access stuff, and then you can get it there. And go and find Robert over on Entertainment Talk with Matt for lots more podcasts over there. Bex, you can find on twitch.tv/Trista Bytes. That's BYTES. She is streaming every week. She is now out of the airport in Germany that she was stuck out for a number of days. She is back home in the UK, so she is actually streaming again. So you can go and check her out over on twitch.tv/Trista Bytes. And Daryl, you can find over at HollywoodNorthNews.net for all those TV series you love, which are shot in Canada. For us, you can go to the website at geektown.co.uk throughout the week and see all the latest air date information. If you want to get in touch with your questions or comments, email us on podcast@geektown.co.uk. Leave a message on the website post. Find us at Geektown on X, Twitter, whatever we're calling it these days. On Facebook at facebook.com/Geektown. On YouTube at youtube.com/Geektown. On Blue Sky at Geektown. On Instagram at Geektown UK. On TikTok at Geektown UK. And on Threads at Geektown UK. That is everything. We shall see you next week. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.